Good afternoon / evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Schmo Me the Money here. We have our Loki discussions here Wednesday afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us here today. It's your boys, Buck and Jeff. Jeff, how's it going?
It's going great. I like that. It's your boys.
It's your boys!
It's great. Please ignore me if you see me eating noodles. This is my dinner. So I will have noodles that might occasionally kind of make it up on screen. We are here today to talk about Loki episode 3. It's going to be a lot of fun. We may or may not have a guest stop by. That'll be nice. Kelsey is unavailable this week because she had to run into work for stuff. And then Dan, hopefully he'll be back soon as well. But right now it's just the two of us, man. So
yeah, just two guys. Just two wild and crazy guys. Sorry, I'm just trying to lighten the
lighten the mood. I didn't realize it was so serious.
But this episode has a lot of mixed viewings from a lot of the people that watch the show. A lot of people say that it's a filler episode, which a lot of people don't like, with a 6-episode season or miniseries, limited run, however you want to describe these Disney Plus shows, because there's been rumors that there will be a second season, but we don't know for sure until they officially announce it. So is this a season 1? Is it a limited series? But a lot of people are a little bit disappointed in this episode. They say it being with, they classify it as a filler. I don't. I think. Do you want to come on right now?
Do you want the fucking link? I'll send you the fucking link. Shut up.
It's almost as bad as Suge. But I asked Suge and he never responded.
It's totally fucking worse than Suge. Hold on, let me send it to him right now.
There, you have the link, Mr. Thomas. Well, then why are you complaining? Oh my gosh.
Oh, I sent him the link and he's like, I can't. Oh, you. Well, anyways, the invite's open. If you were available.
It's an open invite. You just ask. You just let us know when you want to come on. It's an open invite to the channel for anything. You know that.
What are you doing there? So, anyways, it was a good episode though, but it is very mixed.
It was very character based. It was a very character based episode, which is different from the first two. The first two was a lot of plot based with character stuff mixed in. While this one was very little plot based. There were a few things that we learned in this episode about the plot, really, of the overall arcing series, but it was majority character based.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's little things that move the plot forward. Oh, these noodles are spicy in the back of my throat. But I mean, for the most part, these noodles.
It could be referenced.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But I mean, there was some stuff that moved the plot forward. But yeah, I mean, it's okay every once in a while to have something that just sits there and like adds to a character dynamic to let characters get to know each other more. We got to explore some really interesting things in this episode that might not have been explored if it was just like, all right, now we had to get to the next plot point, to the next plot point, to the next plot point.
We did get official confirmation that she likes to be called Sylvie.
Sylvie,
so,
yes.
Not Loki, which I saw this theory that maybe she is a Loki, but she will end up taking up the name of Enchantress by the end of the series.
Sylvie does it gets called Enchantress in the comics.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's based off of, what I've read online as someone who is most definitely not an expert. Hopefully we'll have the expert arrive in a bit. I believe Sylvie also goes by Enchantress in the comics. And Sylvie is someone that was like bestowed Loki powers in the comics, so they might just be wrapping it up with Lady Loki into one thing.
Yeah, which is what the MCU has done, is they've taken bits and pieces from the comics and they kind of made it their own, so it's not a carbon copy of what we've gotten from the comics.
Exactly.
So we'll have to see what they end up doing. I believe on like one of the files it says Laufey daughter or something.
It's Laufey something or other. It's a very, I don't know. It's hard to pronounce when not immediately reading the word. So
Yeah, when it's
I don't know
not
if you can pull it up.
when it's not exactly in front of you. Yeah,
Yeah,
makes sense
and I'm not
there.
pulling it up, so because I'm a
No.
professional.
But I think the major thing that we got in this episode was we got confirmation that everyone that works for the TVA is a variant. Not someone
Yeah,
created by the Time Masters, but it's just a variant from some sort of timeline that they did something.
yeah. So the for reference or just to go back to that the oh
Speaking of, do you want to do it? Do you want me to do it?
speaking of experts, we have here coming in from way far away in the Montyverse. We have Monty himself. How you doing?
What's going on, guys? Happy to make my
What's going
debut on the show.
Yes, let's take off this banner on the bottom. Fuck this.
Yeah,
There
there
we
we
go.
go. So we can see all our lovely names. Monty, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, guys. Another Wednesday, another hashtag Loki Wednesday, another new episode. Happy to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
wearing
Look
a
at the
Miss
Monty
Minutes
variant.
t-shirt.
Yeah,
I
my
love the
Miss
Miss Minutes
repping my
t-shirt.
girl, Miss Minutes. You know, had to rep Miss Minutes, Tara Strong.
Yeah, I was about to
Yes.
say like that fandom going strong for Tara. Yeah.
Of course.
How'd you like the episode? I know that we were just talking about how people seem to be like kind of like all over the place with how they feel about
Yeah,
it.
I definitely thought it was unfortunately had the problem of being the shortest of the three episodes, but I definitely think it was also the weakest of the three. In the sense that the first two episodes gave us so much and were so shocking and so fast paced and so like out of the norm. And then this episode felt very by the numbers. Like, okay, the two Lokis have to work together begrudgingly to
Yeah.
get to point A, so I definitely felt like there was a lot more to the first two episodes. But that being said, I still really enjoyed the episode and I still think that there was a lot to love about it.
Yeah, real quick, just want to point this out. Sean, the difference is he's on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast, and you asked for it to be at 2 a.m. Eastern time. So that wasn't gonna
I
happen.
won't even do that. I am Pacific time based. I will not do a 11 p.m. show. No. No.
Yeah, and also
Sorry,
I wouldn't do it
Windblade.
either. Hi, Nikki.
And also, you're just not me, Sean.
Exactly.
Ooh.
You're,
Shots
do you have
fired.
your own
Shots fired.
verse? Do you have your own verse?
Do we have a wing
you have
verse?
alliterative page.
No,
Yeah,
we
no, you
don't.
have a watching with Wingblade. I hear
We
no
can't all be
verse in
born
there.
with cool names. Some of us have to make our own, okay?
Yeah. Some of us have to pay X amount of dollars a month for someone else to give us a name.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but like we said, there were some great character moments throughout this episode for sure. Not a lot of plot progression in this episode like we had gotten in the first two episodes, which I say is fine. We don't need them all to do that. It's nice to
Not at all.
develop these characters a little bit. So it was nice to get some confirmation on things. She likes to be called Selvi, not Loki. So I'm curious as to, is she actually a Loki or not?
Yeah, and I think Jeff said it the best when he said it earlier. He said, just because it was the weakest doesn't mean it wasn't good. There always has to be a weak member, a weak link in the chain, right?
Actually, that was Nikki that mentioned that earlier in the group chats, and then I piggybacked off of what she had said, but she brought up the idea first. Like something has to be the weakest.
Sorry, Nikki. Apologize.
Yeah, need to give credit where credit's due. Just like, look, I get it, man. We all got to do what we got to do to feed our kids. No, wait, none of us have kids.
Well,
So-
you have cats.
That's not the same thing.
Some people
It's-
say
it-
that cats and dogs
They're
are like
much more
having kids.
self-sustaining unless it's 6 a.m. when we're asleep. Then it's like having a child.
So
So I think that there are a lot of parts in this episode that I really liked. When it comes to the idea of just character moments, I think that my favorite character moment was after they had already gotten on the train and they're just sitting there, and by the way, they happened to just sort of casually like it's no big deal. They had confirmed that Loki is bisexual, which is, you know, very cool that they did that.
Yeah.
And during Pride Month, no less. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But it was after. I don't remember. I think it was after that exact comment when it was said, when they were or right beforehand when they were talking about Frigga and how and what she was like when he was younger, and memories. And you could see in Loki's eyes as he's sharing these memories, he's never going to be able to see her again. It's hitting him all over again that she's gone, and that he had a hand in her death, and kind of like going back to the feelings that were brought up from in the first episode when he first learned about that. And I found it to be very touching, and it's just, we're seeing more of this Loki be his own. Like, Tom Hiddleston is so good in making this Loki his own, while still making it feel distinctly kind of different from the other Loki from the main or the sacred timeline. And I it's just, he's so good to watch. The thing that I liked the least about the episode was just I wanted more Owen Wilson. I wish that he was back. I wish he had popped up, because, like, I mean, there's charm for days from Tom Hiddleston, but Owen Wilson brings this other kind of, like, almost cantankerous sort of charm that's like you like begrudgingly, like, yeah, I like him a lot sort of feeling. And that felt missing from this episode. And I get it. It had to do with the fact that they were doing something a little different here by being very similar to other shows in the past of just people having to, who are opposites, doing stuff together, as Pat mentioned. But I wish that had been kind of at least in for a scene, even.
Yeah, I definitely missed the Mobius aspect of this episode. He was so heavily involved in 1 and 2 that he's noticeably gone this episode. Yeah, like you notice he's gone. Just because him and Tom developed such a, you know, like a water and vinegar type of demeanor. So you notice it's gone. Whereas and you get a new aspect of that this episode with Sylvie, and those character moments that you mentioned are actually really interesting, because they also tell us a lot about Sylvie, and that she doesn't have those, and she doesn't have those moments. So it also brings up a lot of questions.
So we brought up very briefly there the huge confirmation that the members of the TVA are all variants. And it makes me wonder, just before, like, discussing the possible, you know, dramatic implications of that, like, do you think that means that Mobius, in his, I guess, past life before he became where he was now, he was a guy who just really dug jet skis? He probably had one.
I think that that tells us that Mobius is probably a guy from the 90s who had something to do with jet skis. Maybe he was a jet ski salesman. Maybe he was like just a guy who really loved jet skis, a jet ski enthusiast. And it's scary because, like, that also, like, asks other questions, because in the first episode you're like, oh, the TVA will pick you up if you decide to skip work one day. So how many thousands of those people working at the TVA just decided to be late for work by like 5 minutes, and now they're eternally serving this plot that we don't even know what's it about anymore?
Yeah. It's I also agree with Nikki there. That was definitely a line where I was just like, it was a little too heavy-handed the way they kind of threw that in there. But I mean, when this episode, it's funny because it's like, at some points you think like this episode is like filled with action too, and yet it's also like super dense with dialogue scenes. So like, it's hard for me to be like, oh, this is super dialogue driven when there's so many different, like, just set pieces. Which it was very impressive trying to get to the arc at the end. When it came to, like, they had these stitched together one shots, which were very cool. How they kind of put that together. I'm very curious to see how old Loki is going to get out of this one, considering everything's doomed, and they're in a spot where they can't even create a variance to be found, at least like potentially speaking. I'm hoping, and obviously, like, I trust the writers. I trust Kate Marin, the director. I think it's Michael Waldron. He's the writer or the showrunner of it. I trust them to have it be a way that works. I just don't want it to be some weird, like, plot contrivance where it's like, okay, that's it. considering they put themselves in such a no-win scenario, that like it has to be almost like, because I'm not as imaginative as these screenwriters, and I don't know if either of you are, but
Not when it comes
I,
to Loki.
I can't imagine anything less than a Deus Ex Machina to just come in and save everyone.
I don't know if it's just the fanboy in me, but I have this like wild, I have these wild ideas in my mind, like because essentially you're dealing with two tricksters, whether or not Sylvie's actually a Loki or not. You're dealing with two trickster gods,
Yeah.
and there were like I even like circled them in my mind when I rewatched it. I was like, okay, this like because there are moments in this episode that it may not, what we're seeing may not actually be the case. What's going on? Um, like when she first attempts to enchant Loki, and as far as we know, it didn't work. But is
That's
it
true.
possible that it did end up
I've seen
working?
that theory. Yeah, I saw that theory that basically the entire episode is inside Loki's head.
Yeah, or even parts of it, because she
Yeah.
said like, and it depends on how far they want to take it, because you know Loki says he's strong-minded, but this is a Loki who in the Avengers got manipulated by Black Widow very easily. So we really don't know how strong-minded he actually is. And then also, like, did the temp head really get destroyed, or was that just an illusion? Or was that Loki not just feeling out if he could actually trust Sylvie? They're both playing each other a little bit.
Interesting. By the
So I'm
way,
wondering if
have
something
we
like
seen
that's going to
him?
happen.
Have we seen him ever use telekinesis before? Like
No, which is shocking. And the way he did it in this episode was so shocking, because, and I even wrote that down. It's almost as if, because in one of my season one in one of my episode one breakdowns, I noticed that he picks up a time stone in Casey's cart, when he looks at all the stones, but we never see him put it down. And in this episode, the way that he moves the tower, not only does the tower go backwards, like it not only does he move it, it goes backwards, and it goes back to the starting position that before it fell.
he
And
might
not
have
only
a
that, but
time.
the
He could have a
smoke
time stone on
reverses
him.
too. So like, does he have the time stone on him? And
But wouldn't that time stone have to belong in that universe to work, though, right?
if they're only traveling within the sacred timeline, it would still be from that universe, but it would be and in Endgame, there were technically two sets of Infinity Stones in the same universe at the end when Tony Stark snapped, because there were the atomized ones that were the original ones, and the ones they gathered from the time heist. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking that
very
maybe
true.
this a time stone would actually work, because it's from that same universe, just in the future. Well, from the past anyway, but they're using it in the future, even though there's already another time stone active, because it is still from the same universe.
Good call there.
I saw that theory that
I guess
the whole thing with the building was he used the time stone.
what's interesting to me is, I guess, like how familiar this Loki is with the. I can't tell if Pat is frozen there or not, or if that's just my screen. I can't tell if he's frozen or if that's my computer here. Can you hear me? Am
I
good?
think he's frozen because he looks frozen
okay.
on mine.
Oh no, Patrick or Pat. I don't know. I don't know why I said Patrick. That's not his name. We're gonna see if he's good or not. I'll message him there. But in the meantime, I guess it's interesting to note of like whether or not that's a very good call of him just kind of touching and grabbing various ones. I guess we all just sort of assume that maybe he just sort of threw it all down. Yeah. He's messaging me right now. He can hear and see. He is moving in his. Pat, why don't you jump out and then jump back in of the StreamYard? Yeah. Try that. So we will. The paperweight, a potential Chekhov's gun. That's very cool. Why am I not able? Why is nothing working when I click stuff right now?
I don't know. Probably because your internet is crap.
My internet is not crap. I just have Comcast, which is like the Philly internet. So, but whatever. Fine, I guess I have bad internet.
Fine.
This is great content. We're making great content right now.
Yeah, we are. We're making fantastic content. I don't know
works
what
out.
you're talking about.
But it is interesting to see like these new this sort of power, and I would love to see that. But I'm definitely curious to know whether or not he knew anything about other Infinity Stones previously, because up until this point he had only been like, oh, the Tesseract, and he referred to it as the Tesseract. As opposed to which one was that? Was that the Mind Stone? Was it the Power Stone?
The Tesseract is the Space Stone, I believe.
The Space Stone. So, I'm very curious to see that. But I can't remember her name, the actress's name who plays Sylvie. She's great.
Yes,
in
she
this.
did a fantastic job.
I'm gonna pull up the show's page on Wikipedia. What's her name? Sophie Dimartino. She's great, and she's like able to just sort of like kind of go back and forth with Tom Hiddleston in a way that I think really helps the show, because it gives someone a different than even Owen Wilson's as Mobius, like a way for him to do this like tit for tat sort of conversation, where it's like he met his match. All right, let's see whether or not this works again. Ready? Back we go.
How's it? We good?
Yeah,
I think we are.
Okay.
I think we are.
TVD grabbed this variant and pulled him back in, but it's fine. He escaped again.
It was crazy. I had to grab a temp pad, reset charge. I'm back though. I'm ready to go.
You're good now. You're good now.
Golden.
I was just when you got cut off there, I was just curious. Up to that point, we only knew that he was like familiar, at least from what I recall, and you the expert can say otherwise. With just like the Tesseract at that point. So the idea of him like grabbing a time stone, like, is that something that we feel like he not only was able to like identify but be able to utilize properly?
I definitely think that it's in the realm of possibilities. One, because at that point he had already made contact with Thanos, so it's very possible that if he didn't know about it previously, because it seems that some Asgardians did have knowledge of the Infinity Stones. Even in the Dark World, we get that some of them knew that the Ether was an Infinity Stone. But beyond that, I do think it's possible that Thanos may have given him an education on them, even if not, even if he didn't have any prior knowledge to them.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah, I feel like he probably gave him like a crash course on what they were. So he probably let him know what each one was. He obviously probably didn't know where they all were at the time, but I think he just gave him a crash course on what the six were.
It is interesting, the idea that there are so many though that are just like sitting there that are paperweights. It's just such a weird idea. By the way, speaking of theories, there was something that I saw on TikTok of all places, and it was a Loki theory, and I want to run it by you in case maybe it's something you thought about.
Yeah.
Or if you have discussed it, then I definitely just missed it. They brought up just the way that the universe, like the city of the TVA looks. And then they brought up the I guess Kang the Conqueror is one of the timekeepers, potentially, or he looks like one.
Yeah, that's been a theory that's going around, but the one that everyone says that he looks like, I'm pretty sure that's a female one. Even in the comics, I know she is, but I believe it is, but in here I think it is too. And I don't really think everyone says it looks like Jonathan Majors, but I'm not really seeing it. I think it's possible that if there is going to be a King reveal, it'll be more like a Wizard of Oz type of situation, where he might be like the wizard, and they're like the, and he's like behind the projector, and they're like what he's projecting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also think it's possible we may not see him in full King form until Quantumania, because
Yeah, because that was the other thing was in when he was in the quantum verse or the quantum realm in was Ant-Man and the Wasp, you see just afar the little bubble of like some sort of city.
Mhm.
And like if you look at it, a lot of that looks the same, similar to the way like the structures of like the towers and everything are in the TVA. And there was that sort of thing like, what if the TVA is like there in the quantum realm,
yeah, I think
and it
it's
can like
safe,
lead into Quantumania?
I think it's safe to disprove that one, because but like taking out the fact that like the Quantum City is different in the comics than the Null Time Zone. I think it's the fact that the Infinity Stones don't work, and they would work, I believe, in the quantum realm, because Feige, I believe, had stated that. Well, I know that he stated that Scott would have been dusted by Thanos' snap in Infinity War. He was just one of the lucky ones. It was just luck. It wasn't the quantum realm protecting him. So the quantum
It was
realm,
luck and plot contrivance that kept him
exactly.
alive.
It was definitely a healthy combination of the two. But that's why he didn't get dusted. So if the Infinity Stones still take effect in the quantum realm, then that stands to reason that the TVA can't be in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Even though I do see the similarities in the design in that small city.
Cool. That was just like
Yeah,
something
I
that
saw
I
that
wanted to
one.
bring
I
up.
think it was this morning, and I was like, it's an okay theory, but like Pat was saying there's a lot of things that kind of disprove that theory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. It was just bugging me, and I'm like, I need to ask it.
No, it's surprisingly very popular, because a lot of people are like, oh hey, they never touched on that, and I'm like, yeah, because we didn't get to the third movie yet, but I'm sure that we will see a lot of that in the in Quantumania.
So, one thing that it's funny when watching, like, even though it was a little tiny moment, I was excited to like get one thing right as it was going on, which was when they saw that woman on Lamentus, who was calling them devils, and he pretends to be her husband, and I'm like, and he's nice, and I'm like, oh, he was never a nice guy. I bet you
Yeah.
he was never a nice guy. And no, that was nice. He's never been
Not
nice
even
in 30
15 seconds
years.
later, yeah, she's like, in 30 years, he was never this nice to me.
Yeah,
Well, you gotta imagine that a woman who answers the door with a
with a
concussive
gun.
blaster do not live in like Little House on the Prairie, like lovely home environment.
Exactly.
And
Um,
Lamentus One, since this is the first time I heard us mention it by name, it's actually a place from the comics. It makes a one-time appearance during the Annihilation Conquest series. And it's actually funny because she uses the phrase annihilation when describing the destruction of the planet, which is a little homage. I think I would imagine it was an homage to the debut of. It's a tiny, like, it features heavily in the issue, but it's not really mentioned again. But because of that, we do know that it's in Kree space. It's at the very edge of Kree space. So all of the lettering and stuff we see there, I believe, is in Kree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, the it's another thing that I liked about that. I mean, I guess you need a lot of energy. Like they needed to figure out how to get a lot of energy, because I'm like, I'm wondering like how much energy do you actually need to it to boost for that sort of temp pad? Because I'm like, they're passing by a lot of street lamps and other things like that that have something, and like they know how to like wire. They couldn't have just like juiced it up a little at a time. I can only imagine like how they would actually have boosted the energy. But this location of Lamentus, I mean, it's kind of, the name of it feels a little on the nose, like they're
Yeah.
lamenting like with kind of like what goes on in the episode. But it also definitely was another like attempt to kind of, as Nikki had pointed out, it was a little on the nose with some of the things that they were trying to point out. Like, of course, when it comes to the arcs and whatnot, you have the people that were able to reserve spots first to be able to get through, just like any other number of disaster movies and whatnot. Like I just watched Greenland with Gerard Butler a few months ago, or in December or something like that, and that was like the same thing. It's certain people get it and other people don't, because they have connections. And 2012, same thing. So we get to see all the same thing happen. All the people crowding the arcs and everything. We get to see everyone freaking out in the face of disaster, and it's exciting. But it is something that we've kind of like seen before. I guess like what makes it different is who we're watching, and the fact that it's on like an alien planet filled with humans.
I do like how the guards looked exactly like Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe.
Yes.
I thought that was hilarious. It's like, oh, it's a bunch of Cobra Commanders.
I think that they should have lit the bar a little more. They should have lit the bar with a little more purple lighting for when they were going to have him admit that he was bisexual. The whole, the blue and pink lighting hues that's called the bisexual lighting. They should have had that a little more. I would have been fine if that was over the top or a little heavy-handed. Yeah, that's a lot of that stuff. The guards' outfits were very kind of interesting, and also like seeing Tom Hiddleston as Loki in an outfit like this then again, him in a suit as Loki kind of takes me out of it, because even when he was like at the opera or whatever in the first Avengers film in a tuxedo or a suit outfit, like it takes me out of it when he's not in his normal kind of Asgardian leather, fine Asgardian leather. So him in this like weirdly skin tight purple thing, it looks weird for him. I don't think it's a good look.
Yeah, it's definitely not. No, it's very reminiscent of like that deleted scene of him in the original Captain America Avengers outfit, like acting like Chris Evans. Like it reminds me a lot of that, like him just like in this very deep, like authoritative voice, like mimicking like what in his head soldiers sound like. It was a very giving me those vibes.
But I mean, other than that, we haven't really talked a whole lot about like Sylvie as a character, and I'm wondering if it's like we've kind of like the show dove into it, but it seems more like she has. I still am not sure how I feel about her, or her place in this, or still what her exact plan is. And I don't know if it's that I missed something, or if it still hasn't really been revealed as to what she's doing.
I think that they were intentionally vague as possible with her. She revealed things, but like it was more her responding to his responses than her answering questions. And that speaks a little bit of volume, because we're not even 100% sure if she even is a Loki at this point, even though she says some things that make it seem like she is a Loki, it's still very possible that she's not. There's one line that I highlighted that she says, where she says, where is it? She says, I spend my whole life essentially running from the TVA. So what does she mean by whole life? Does she mean like literally her whole life? Is it possible that she was created by a different variant of Loki to serve their purposes, and we are getting that King Loki, that Richard E. Grant older Loki variant that she is serving, or she doesn't realize created her, and that's why she's so hesitant to use the name. She's so rebelling against the identity of Loki.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff they left intentionally vague, with little bits and pieces here to go off of.
Speaking of vague things that haven't been revealed yet, we still haven't seen Richard E. Grant show up, and I am until proven otherwise, I want to just see that he ends up being an older Loki somehow. Because I feel like he would be, out of any actor that I could think of, he might be like the perfect person to choose to be an older version of Tom Hiddleston. Which would be interesting, because how old, as I mentioned last week, how old Loki is, like how old these gods are. So like to get to like Anthony Hopkins's age look, like how old Odin had to be. So if that's the case, like how old that Loki would have to be, that would have to be another variant, considering the true Loki dies looking like Tom Hiddleston in Infinity War. So you'd have to think about how long, if that was a Loki, how long he'd have to be on the run and what he'd have to be doing in the meantime. But I still, that's a fan cast in my head.
Yeah, and what's very interesting is you say true. Like, I think what we learn about the TVA, it really makes me question what is
true,
the timeline, because essentially it's just a bunch of it's people who we don't know who they are really, just deeming what they feel is worthy enough to be a timeline. And who knows, the other timelines, the multiverse may exist, and they're just not. They're hiding it somewhere in the background, just picking and choosing what they want, picking variants from it. So there's this episode brings up a lot of questions, even though it's not really like heavily involved in the TVA aspect of it. That one line of dialogue where she's just like, "Oh yeah, she just likes margaritas. She was an Earthling like hundreds of years ago who just likes margaritas." Like that one line, just like asks so many more questions.
Yeah, it's. I hope they have more with Sasha Lane because I really like her and other stuff I've seen her in, like the A24 film American Honey from Andrea Arnold. She's great in that. It's like a 3-hour indie, so it's not for everyone. But she's really good, so I hope we get to see more of her too. Also, I just like Eugene Cordero. I want to see them talk to Casey more. I want to see what happens if he gets turned into a fish, as he believes might happen.
That's great. I think we're gonna get a lot more of the TVA. I think we're gonna get like some sort of mini rebellion. So I think Sasha Lane and Mobius and all of our favorites are gonna be back, and they're gonna rebel against Renslayer and Miss Minutes, who we're gonna find out is probably the big bad of the whole series.
Yeah. What do you think that means when you say that? All of our favorites. We've seen them in 2 episodes.
I don't know about you, but Mobius is definitely a favorite.
Mobius is great. How much of that is just because it's like Owen Wilson is just great to watch when he is like when he's on, he's on, and here he's definitely on. Buck, what do you have anything else to contribute to that? Like the idea of maybe there's something else that could happen with the TVA, or I mean this is all speculation. Just like
Nikki brings up a really good point here. That would be an interesting plot right there, is that she was one of the 3. And something happened where they kind of cast her aside maybe. And then that's where she wants to just... She doesn't want to rule like Loki does. She wants to just completely destroy the TVA. So
I guess I have a question to that. The idea of destroying the TVA. And one whole thing that the TVA says is how, like, I guess there could be like some sort of a nexus event, and I guess the multiverse can cause everything to kind of crash into itself, or like it could destroy all universes if we branch off and create other universes. It sounds like they used to have those universes, and then everything was kind of put together. So why would everything be destroyed if it went to the way it used to be? If when it used to be that way, things weren't like destroyed.
Yeah. I think one aspect of the show that wasn't like forced down our throat, but has always been there, is the idea that the TVA heavily uses propaganda, and they kind of are manipulating everyone, not just the variants, not just the people arrested, but the people that work there. That's what all the motivational posters are hanging around the office. It's all subtle forms of manipulations, all subtle forms of propaganda, and any utilitarian, authoritative figures in history use that kind of propaganda to keep everyone in line. So I think that has a lot to do with it, because as you said, the multiverse existed, as far as we know from just this video that we don't even know is the truth or not, has existed for millennia, and it was just one Secret Wars level event that made the timekeepers, if they do exist, merge it into a sacred timeline. So there's really no problems in having a multiverse. It's not like it will end everything.
Yeah. It's interesting. A secret, because I don't know the difference between like Secret Wars and whatnot. Like I know just enough of something like Crisis on Infinite Earths, with it's obviously DC, but that's something where they brought all the different multiverse things together into like one thing and then didn't they like build the New 52 out of Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Well,
Or
that was the New 52 was built off of Flashpoint, uh, which was another Crisis level event. Because here's the thing in comics, especially DC Comics, whenever they do a major Crisis event, it's usually a form of to reboot
so it's a crisis event because it's a crisis to their bank account.
Exactly.
Sort of like how Final Fantasy is called Final Fantasy because they were like, this is our last chance.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Secret Wars is different in the sense that it was Marvel essentially trying to do. There were multiple Secret Wars events. The first one was Secret Wars, and it was probably the most famous. It's when the Beyonder gathered a bunch of heroes and villains on Battle World. But this one's what they described is very similar to a more recent comic book event called Secret Wars. That's when they took a bunch of their different universes, and they all kind of were in conflict with each other. And whoever survived kind of made it into the new creation of the new universe. So that's kind of what they hinted at in the first episode.
Yeah.
It's funny, just like there's so many different projects in development when you look at them all that all are dealing directly with the idea of multiverses and multiverses in conflict with each other somehow. Between you got this one and then you have No Way Home coming out, and No Way Home happens to have Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Oh, look, Sam Raimi is now involved in the multiverse of madness. Which and I love that they pointed out like a multiverse there would be madness or something like that in the animations in the previous episode.
In that first episode with Miss Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then what else is there? There's and then Quantumania is going to probably have something somehow that has to do with that too.
Quantumania. Then you have What If, which is directly related to the multiverse. Because all of those Elseworlds are technically multiverses or branches of the timeline.
I mean, What If I had a couple issues because I get the Five Below near me. You can go there and just my mom would just like let me buy a bunch of these like random comics that they'd have at Five Below for like $1, and it would just have like a bunch of random stuff in there. So I had a couple of them. I think there was something weird. It was like a What If, something with Doctor Doom or something, but it was something interesting like that. And the biggest What If story that always comes to mind is not even a What If story. It's Superman Red Sun.
That's more of an Elseworlds than a What If. Like if you're classifying them based off of comic terminology.
Of course, but to someone who doesn't like, I've read a bunch of stuff. I love certain graphic novels and whatnot, but I'm in no way an expert on any of that stuff. So to me, it's always just in my head. It classifies as a what if because that's the idea. It's a what if scenario. Buck, did you ever read any of the What If comics?
No.
Did you ever read Red Sun?
Yeah, and then I watched the animated movie too.
And then I know what's his name? Jordan Vogt Roberts, the guy who did Kong Skull Island, who's been developing a Metal Gear film for like 8 years now. He wanted to make a Superman Red Sun, and Warner Brothers said no.
They're very protective of the big two.
They're very protective over the idea of people wanting to come in and attempt to make something good. So obviously they don't really know what they're doing. They're just like, we'll figure it out. Eventually we'll get there. Meanwhile, they're like, let's throw shit at a wall and see what happens. And then meanwhile, Feige's just like sitting down with like an X-Acto knife and tweezers to make sure that every little thing is put in the exact little spot that it has to.
I mean, this is also the same company that wouldn't let like animated series and other TV shows use characters from Batman lore because they had the Bat embargo for over a decade. So like shows got canceled because they weren't allowed to use Batman characters because they thought that audiences were too stupid to
Oh shit!
realize
Do you
this is
remember
not the same
Arrow?
Batman.
Arrow had the Suicide Squad, and then they had to kill them all off
Yep.
so
Hmm.
that they could kill them all off franchise, like as a franchise for a bit.
Yep. Yeah, and that's their problem. They think that we're dumb. They think we as an audience are too stupid to realize like, hey, these are two separate things. And
Although
meanwhile,
now
Marvel
they're
Studios is like, here's
now,
everything.
yeah, now though they're doing like, hey, we can have multiple things at this point
Yeah.
because, but it's the well, that's a whole separate conversation,
Yeah.
for another day. We can talk circles about that. What's your favorite Star Wars film? Anyways, back to Loki. Um,
I like how Loki, when he answered "What is love?" he says it's a dagger. Love is a
Yeah.
dagger. Hold on. It's a weapon. It's wielded far away or up close. You can see it in yourself. It's beautiful. I just love how he. Love is a dagger.
Paulina,
Oh.
there, yeah. Paulina's going through like as it's going. I hear her. She's saying like, "Oh, actually, it makes a lot of sense." And then like as Loki keeps talking, the metaphor just gets further and further away from him.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, no.
We've all had
it-
that
it-
one
and
drunk
it's not
metaphor.
real. And he's like, I almost thought I had something.
Oh, and I love how he says he's not drunk. He's full. He's very, very full.
Very full.
And
And
of
of
course,
course, there's the whole
yeah.
thing of just
Another.
like Thor, another.
Another!
Maybe it's just an Asgardian thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Just throw that
They're
shit down.
hedonistic people. He says it. I'm a hedonist.
I mean, that there, he knew that he needed that they were trying to like keep low, I guess. So I'm guessing it was like just the 2 glasses of champagne, like kind of kicked that off for him.
Yeah.
Because when's the last time he probably had a drink?
Right?
Probably like
Yeah.
the first Thor movie at that point.
Yeah, because like right before we went on live, I mentioned like how he had. I didn't really get the whole thing. It's like just explaining it away by saying he's hedonistic, but then I forgot he had the 2 drinks while talking to her, and then it just now it's like clicking like, all right, well, he did start drinking like at that moment, so maybe that like just kind of kicked it off in him. So I can let that slide a bit more. Weird that we got like just a full on musical number from Loki. Didn't expect that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that was interesting for sure.
And it's also interesting because it looks like he shushes everyone to start singing an Asgardian to Sylvie, who clearly doesn't understand him. And there's this look of, the way I interpret it, there was this look of confusion on Tom's face, and then he like smiles and kind of goes back into it. But there's that little, I think there's that little bit of doubt. Like maybe he was testing her. Like maybe he was trying to see if she really is, a Loki, like the way she says it is, because that's what it seemed like to me, because it was like he was singing directly to her and she had no idea what he was saying.
I read it. I only watched it the one time. I only ever watched like WandaVision. I watched a couple episodes twice beforehand, but this time around I just watched stuff the one time, and I didn't read it that way. Maybe I'd have to go back and see, but to me she was looking like almost like upset, frustrated, like maybe confused over why he's doing this, but I felt like she did understand it, but she wasn't happy about it. With him doing that. So I mean, they're both of those readings I think are totally valid based on the fact that we still know fuck all about her.
Yeah.
Except that she didn't know her mom.
Yeah, and I'm basing that off of they clearly didn't have the same childhood. She clearly didn't know her mother. Like the line later in the series, "Oh, I've never walked this much in my entire life." Oh, that must be nice, So it's like she clearly didn't grow up in the same privilege, that Loki did. So we learned that they definitely had 2 very different upbringings. She seems to know a lot about Earth culture. For Loki, she seems to know a lot. I don't know if it's because that they're gonna go with the Sylvie Lushton kind of aspect of it, the Enchantress aspect of it, but it's definitely a possibility.
Mm-hmm. She also only has one horn on her thing.
Yeah.
The other one's broken off. I don't know if that's just like, you know, a little thing or what. But
That's actually almost identical to a head to a horn crown worn by a version of Loki in the comics when he kind of like defeats King Loki and he comes back, and he's more transitioning. He transitions more between the male and female form, and he goes by the goddess of stories. So like you'll see that it's almost identical, the headdress. So there's also a little bit of that aspect to this character as well, because the whole persona of that version of Loki is they're kind of done being a Loki, like the Loki that everyone sees them as, like a god of mischief, a god of lies, and they're like, no, I'm a god of stories because I'm going to write my own story. You know, what is a lie but a story? So
Yeah.
there's also aspects of it's kind of an amalgamation of the two characters.
yeah. Buck, what other stuff stood out to you this episode? Because it's a relatively short episode and it mostly just kind of dives into character stuff. So was there anything else specific that kind of stood out to you?
In terms of the character or just the episode in general?
Anything really, because I mean, there wasn't a ton of moving forward plot, so there's more character.
I did enjoy the cinematography in that final 10 minutes with all those one shots. I thought they did a fantastic job with those.
Yeah,
I was quite impressed. I'm like, oh wow, these are looking really good. Definitely had a Blade Runner vibe there in that final sequence, for sure.
Yeah, this is Autumn Derald, also known as credited as Autumn Derald Arkapaw, who previously was the cinematographer on a couple of Gia Coppola films. Gia Coppola is I believe the granddaughter of Francis Ford Coppola, and then also did some music video stuff. So this is seeing what else the limited work that Autumn here has done. This is the biggest project that she's been a part of, and so far I think she's knocking it out of the park from a cinematography standpoint.
Yeah.
I agree with the whole like trying to stitch together everything and make it work. I liked how the episode ended and you're like, well, they're fucked, and then it played some like funky song or whatever to end it. I don't know what the song was, but it kind of was just like it almost was like wah wah what up what ba.
Yeah.
And it kind of I'm so curious to see how they're gonna get out of this one. Still, do you have any thoughts on how they might get out of it for next week?
I definitely think that there's some trickery going on. I honestly think like if the easy answer would be Loki somehow signal Mobius or the TVA finds them and they get taken out of there, but that would be such a lame
because the whole point was
out.
They wanted them to find them by hijacking the Ark, and if that was out of commission, then how would they still be able to signal? So yeah, that would be a little harder to do outside of it. I like your time stone idea. I'm just curious how well acquainted he is. Like, I can believe it. That's very interesting to see. But I'm not sure what else could happen. And like I said before, none of us are probably as creative as the people who are actually working on the show. And there's a reason why they're working on the show and not us.
Like, I would love it if like Loki just had the temp pad the whole time, and he was like, "All right,
yeah."
He's like, "All right, I got what I need to know. We can leave now." Like, that would be such a Loki thing to do. Like, that would be like,
which is funny because like, what did he know? What did he learn?
It would be such a Loki thing to do, to just be fucking with the whole, just to be like, he's the god of mischief, just to be like fucking with everything, just be like, oh, I've had it the whole time.
There was a rumor online, like they confirmed here, they confirmed on paperwork, which is in like an image that they can easily cut, they can easily cut if it goes to like China or whatever. And they confirmed that he was gender fluid, and they confirmed in a brief bit of dialogue that he's bisexual, and a brief bit of thing that they can also probably like lift completely out if they were to put it in China. So I've heard there was a rumor of something like Loki will have a male love interest. And then there's some people like, well, no one's saying which Loki is going to have the male love interest, because it could be Loki, because it could ultimately, based on conversations like the ones in here, could it be about Loki learning to love himself?
Yeah, I mean, I think
that would be such a bullshit rumor to connect to what Paul
Bettany.
What is it? Paul Bettany said. When Paul Bettany just said it as a joke, where he's like, I acted opposite someone I've always wanted to work with, and it was just a bullshit. It was just him joking about wanting to work with himself, calling himself a great actor.
Ego much?
I don't know,
that
man.
Was one of the greatest trolls of all time. That will go down.
Sylvie is Mephisto. Sylvie's Mephisto.
No, the best troll of all time is what they did with Evan Peters. That was the biggest troll.
Unlike the Paul Bettany one, which actually played off, that one was just like a big womp womp. Like a big, okay, all of that for a boner joke. All of that for a dick joke.
All of that
for a boner joke.
Fucking, and I'm just like, okay. At least with the Benny stuff, you're like, oh, Paul Bettany, you scamp. You got us.
Yeah.
But
Evan Peters is like, that was a terrible troll. That was like, oh, my heart kind of hurts about this. I mean, I get it. He's not the same guy that was in the super hit or miss when it comes to what counts in the canon X-Men series.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see who else shows up, if there's anything else that shows up, because this is another series that was filming and then had to stop partway through because of COVID. So I'm wondering if they also had to readjust, because like you can't tell when watching it, at least unless you're like really trying to scrutinize, but like certain, like there's some WandaVision stuff that's everyone's like isolated when they were filming, like what was it? The trick-or-treating, that was just that she was in front of a green screen. The whole town like wasn't there. She was in a green screen filming that shit.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's like stuff like that, and you can't tell because they're that good with their with their special effects. But there's things that obviously had to change because of the way they film stuff. So I'm wondering how much of the things that we're watching now, if there's anything we're going to notice down the line, because like we could definitely feel how it affected Falcon the Winter Soldier, because it was such a major part of the plot that they had to alter. They still were able to make a lot of stuff work, but you could feel where it shifted and where the shift wasn't totally successful just in those pieces. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier with that. Sylvie is Enchantress in the comics, right?
Yeah, Sylvie Lushton was a Earth girl who was given powers by Loki just for fun, just to see what would happen. And she served him. Yeah, just
to see. What a scamp.
Just to see. And I think this series is going to luck out a little bit more than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who the stuff that they had to film was a lot of like in public stuff, like surrounded by a lot of people. Whereas this show is really like a lot of closed off sets, and like this whole episode was basically green screen for the most part, with some small set pieces with just two actors. And I think even the TVA stuff, it's really just been like a handful.
Okay, it's weird.
I mean, remember, one thing that I liked was how in the first episode, when Mobius sat down and was like, all right, sure, walk me through your process. So you wanted to rule, right? Yeah, you wanted to rule Earth. Then what? All right, then what? Then what? You don't really have a plan. And then this time around, though, Loki was doing the same thing when he was walking with Sylvie, but it seemed more so like she had an idea, she just didn't want to share it. So I find it interesting as another way to show how different they are, that she has an actual plan in place. She has a reason for stuff. And I like how he's trying to like take her down a peg by saying like you don't have glorious purpose. But as we all know, Loki never had the glorious purpose in the end. So
Yeah, and that was him. Like that was like his version of like I'm better than you because I've already realized that like I don't
suck.
have a glorious purpose, so neither do you. Like it's just like it's such a Loki thing to do to knock someone down a peg.
Yeah. So
But
I guess
overall,
yeah. Good.
overall,
good
I thought it
episode.
was a good episode. I really enjoyed all the character moments we got there. But yeah, I know a lot of people were not a fan of this episode because they thought it was a filler episode.
I don't think that it was a filler episode.
I don't think so either.
I don't think it
I
was
think
filler.
it wasn't as.
I think it
I
was
don't
the
think that it advanced as much.
yeah. I
It
think
was different than the first two.
yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, it was more like by the books than the first two. This was a by the books like, oh man, two people that don't like each other have to work together for a common goal type of thing. But
Like
like I said, I still enjoyed the episode. Tom Hiddleston and Sophia Dimartino have great chemistry together. You know,
Yes, they
fantastic
do.
chemistry.
I mean, we have 3 episodes in a row that are different structures to things we've seen before. The first episode is absolutely the classic, like, you're going through this super, like, huge system of bureaucracy. I brought it up in our first episode discussion. Like, you know, like Hitchhiker's Guide when they had to go get her out of from being like just from being killed or executed, and they had to fill out forms to fill out forms to fill out forms. Like these extra sci-fi satires on like bureaucracy and paper filing and whatnot, and just that's what was happening in here with like, oh, you have to sign to prove that to agree that this is everything you ever said. Then the second episode was it was Loki being taken out of that structure, and he was put into a Law and Order, like Criminal Minds investigative show.
Yeah.
And now he's in a mismatched buddy cop show or something like that. So I wonder if we can identify in the next episode what other structure they might be pulling from for this one.
Yeah, and it's so weird because most of the way that the trailers were cut, you thought that there was stuff from all 6 episodes in there, but like if you look back, like that's only stuff from the first 2 episodes with a couple of things from the 3rd episode thrown in those trailers. So I'm really excited to see what comes next, especially because Tom Hiddleston said that 4 and 5 are his favorites of the entire series.
I want to see the context of the vote for Loki suit. I want to see the context. What the hell?
That's what I was about to bring up. We haven't seen any of those variations yet because supposedly we're getting like tons of different Loki variants. So those are still coming up, and that's kind of like the fun stuff. So I hoping that comes like 4 and 5, we get a lot of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Monty, where can we find everything you're doing online?
You can find me at the Montyverse on YouTube. You can also find me at twitter.com at the Montyverse, and on Instagram at Montyverse.
I put the link to your YouTube channel there in the chat, so everyone make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the Montyverse. Monty does great content over there. He does weekly breakdown episodes. A lot less shorter. It's shorter content than our hour-long breakdowns. His are more concise, gives better information probably.
Yeah, it's more of a breakdown than like a traditionally like looking at the whole episode, reviewing the whole episode type of thing that you guys do. It's a lot more Easter egg focused, and theory focused. So,
and like that's all great too. Like I like talking about things, and maybe it's because I'm a very talkative person, so I enjoy this format. But the breakdowns and other stuff, they also serve a great purpose. One might even say a glorious purpose.
Absolutely, burdened with it. I'm burdened with it.
So sub people, come on. Buck, where can people find you?
Twitter and Instagram at BrandonBuck88. Can see everything that I'm doing there. I'm talking sports, talking Schmodown, talking Loki, talking movies, talking TV. Everything is there. Geoff, where can we find you?
You could find me here at my desk, waiting for the next episode to drop so I can watch it on my TV, not at the desk. You could find me at GEOFF1106. That's my Twitter, and that's where I share most of my opinions pretty much all my opinions. And also we got other stuff happening next week, July 1st. We will be reconvening the Council of the Family Show, discussing F9, the Fast Saga. We don't have our thumbnail ready yet for that one. I'm going to go see that tomorrow night. I'm very excited to sit there and just be like, this is dumb and I love it, hopefully. But other than that, we have our main show on Tuesdays. We have been slacking hard on trying to have panelists that are involved in the Schmodown to talk about Schmodown matches. So we'll work to hopefully get that back soon. Other than that, I mean, I'm still working on this thing with AJ Lancaster of the What the Show podcast, where we are discussing the Air Bud cinematic universe one installment at a time. We've recorded a few episodes already, and I will say it again because it bears mentioning. It's the weirdest thing I've ever been a part of in this space, I think. And it gets weirder with every episode we record. So hopefully when the logo is made and whatnot, we'll start to drop those episodes, because right now we just kind of have a pile of them on the back burner ready to go. So yeah,
such weird content, but hey,
Weird
you have fun doing it. So everyone, thanks for tuning in for our episode 3 discussion. We'll be back next week, same time, 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern, talking episode 4. Make sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe. We will see y'all later.